All right, welcome to Studio Sunday on the Nature Journal Show. And right now, I'm going to share my preparations for the upcoming Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference. I'm going to share some recent pages from my nature journal and even have some nature journaling activities that we can do together. This episode is going to be a little bit more like some of those really old episodes of the Nature Journal Show. I don't know for some of you that have seen those, if you still remember, but it was a little bit more of a variety show, and there would just be a lot of different topics related to nature journaling that I would bring up in a single episode. Lately, I've been doing more specific topics, and that just makes it easier for people to find those episodes when they're searching on YouTube or on Google. So I'm going to jump right in with sharing some pages from a really fun recent nature journaling outing that I did on the East Coast. My first time ever on the East Coast. That was really fun. I mainly went to visit my sister and see her newborn baby and help out around the house with her newborn and 3-year-old. But I did squeeze a little bit of nature journaling in. And yes, I did get to see some of the Brood X cicadas. So that was really cool. Got a nature journal them. And I will share some of those pages right now. So I'm going to switch to my document camera. Post in the comments if you have any questions or things that you want to see specifically. So right now I'm going to switch to that document camera and share some of these pages with you. So first, I wanted to share a little bit. This was before I went to the East Coast. I think a lot of times for me, I have been very focused on nature journaling in other parts of the world where there's exotic species and endangered species and stuff like that. And as it turns out, there's actually species like that right here in California, right here in other parts of the US as well. So on a recent trip with Eli, I did get a nature journal, this rare lily. It's in the Calochortus genus. Let me just adjust this here a little bit. This lily only grows on one mountain in the entire world, and that mountain happens to be in the North Bay area. So that was really cool to get to see that. I've been wanting to see it for a while, and it was really cool to go and see that and to nature journal it. So wherever you are, remember there's probably cool species living near you, and being able to nature journal those and actually bring some attention to them and use nature journaling as a way to communicate about these endangered species or rare species, I think is really important. So this is Mariposa lily is the common name, and the genus is Calochortus. So you can see up here how I used the species name as my title. Anyways, that was a fun trip. But the main thing I wanted to share right now is my recent trip to the Baltimore Aquarium. And I'll give you some ideas about that you can apply to your own nature journaling as we go through these pages. So right here, you can see I started off right away. I think I got to the aquarium around 9, and I was walking around a little bit, and I could have easily been distracted by just looking at stuff and trying to decide where I wanted to nature journal. But I tried to dive in as soon as possible. And I've been using these timestamps recently to keep track and to add sort of a narrative to my pages. So as I move from one area to the next, I will put a timestamp showing just what time it is and, like, for example, that I started drawing. This aquarium, if you haven't been there before, is great for drawing sharks. I'm trying to go and nature journal at as many aquariums and zoos and natural history museums in the world as possible, mainly in the United States. We have quite a few. So if you live in an urban area, these are a great resource. And I try to go to as many as possible. I've been to quite a few so far, and I'm trying to review them and give information for people who are interested in nature journaling them, you know, like what's best. So one thing is, if you like sharks, this is an aquarium for you. It is really, really good for sharks. Another thing is this aquarium is really good for overhead views. There's a lot of places where you can look down into large tanks from above, which I thought was really cool, because a lot of times when you go to aquariums, you're seeing fish from the side. Let me see. You're seeing fish from the side, and that's not necessarily like how you would see them in the wild unless you're scuba diving. So a lot of fish from above and a lot of sharks. When I first got there, they were feeding sharks. And I just want to point out these pages that I have some pretty bad drawings of people. So you can see here these, these legs look, this one's a little bit better up here, but this one, the arms and the legs are not really well rendered. But I'm working fast and I'm basically just trying to capture the shapes and the information. So they were feeding the sharks with these long grabber things. And there's also this weird thing that they had dipped into the water. So like there was these keepers standing on the edge of the tank. And in here was this huge tank, probably I don't know about millions of gallons, but hundreds of thousands of gallons with sharks and all kinds of fish swimming around. So a lot of times when we nature journal, our tendency is just to focus on what we think of as nature and to just draw the animals or things that we think are going to look good. But a lot of times there's these things that we're excluding that are actually really important. So like, for example, the people trying to feed them. So I just went ahead and tried to capture that. And I did ask questions about it, like, what are they trying to do? What is this structure for? And I think what they were trying to do is make sure that there's not a lot of leftover pieces of food falling to the bottom of the tank, because things break, organic matter breaking down inside of a enclosed ecosystem like that can be problematic. So I think that this net thing here, at first I thought maybe it was for catching a shark or photographing sharks or somehow doing some type of survey on the sharks or collecting information about them. But in the end, I decided it's probably a thing for catching pieces of food so that they don't just go down to the bottom of the tank. But I asked a whole bunch of questions about that, tried to capture some quick sketches, and I am using quantification. So you can see there's images, words, and numbers, the three nature journaling languages all on the same page. Here was more of that. I tried to even capture that there is this sort of moving, I forget what, it's like an escalator, but it's like on those moving sidewalks. And I was trying to nature journal, that's supposed to be me right there, nature journal on my way up. There was a big whale skeleton. Anyways, here you can see some of these just like quick sketches. This is how I like to get into my nature journal flow when I'm at aquarium. This, by the way, was a very, very busy place, and it was hard staying focused. One of the things that helped me a lot on this trip was I was using these noise canceling headphones to cancel out noise from the environment. And this allowed me, I ended up nature journaling at the National Aquarium, the Baltimore Aquarium, for I think 6 straight hours. Well, I stopped to eat for like 20 minutes. But the noise canceling headphones helped. I have several strategies. I think I have a whole video called How to Nature Journal in Busy Public Places where I talk about this. But this was really, really helpful to have these, and for nature journaling in such a busy place. This is one of the species I was really excited that they had there. They had these horseshoe crabs. I've always wanted to nature journal those. This fish was amazing as well. Some of these things were really weird fish, hard to draw. So be easy on yourself when you're drawing something. If you realize this is just a difficult subject to draw, don't be too hard on yourself. More sharks. I tried to capture some information here about how these, in one of these areas, there was like these screens, and this is something that is controversial and it's hard to know like where the best balance is, but a lot of zoos and museums have sort of digital interactive things. And I think that digital screens and touch screens and all of that have their place. Computers have their place in teaching about nature, but it's also, it can be problematic, especially when you notice that these 3 kids are over here on this screen when you have live sharks swimming around in a giant tank over here. And during the 10 minutes or so that these kids were there, their main focus was on this screen, and the screen only shows the species names and photographs of the different species that are in the tank. So it's kind of ironic that these kids were focused most of the time on this small screen when right here there was the live sharks swimming around. And This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately because I recently read the book Last Child in the Woods by Richard Love. He's going to be speaking at the Nature Journaling Conference next week, and the book talks a lot about how children are being more and more disconnected from nature. Here you can see multiple attempts at trying to capture this shark and its mouth. These fish are moving, of course, so it's challenging. I tried to zoom in here on the eye. Here you can see I focused on the tooth, the teeth. There was one tooth that was like hanging off. That was really interesting. I had never seen that before. Here's an example. I did a video before on the Nature Journal show where I talked about asking people at aquariums and stuff like that what they recommend you look at. And in this case, I asked someone, and when I asked him, he said, "Go look at this shark. It's called the wobbegong, and it's usually hidden, but if you go out there right now, you might be able to see it." And so I went down there. I went to where he told me, and I saw this shark, which is usually hard to see. It's usually hidden. So I think it just goes to show that asking people who work at a place like this is a really useful strategy for seeing cool things and learning about that place. So after that, I continued to draw that animal for a little bit. It was really cool, challenging as well. I tried to get the color. I did at the sign, one of those digital screens that I was just talking about, to get the full body picture, which I had not actually seen before. So that was useful for that purpose. But don't get distracted by the digital screens. Focus on the real animals. Here you can see trying to use sort of more of like a strategy where I'm focusing on just getting the silhouette. That is sometimes good to just kind of get the negative shapes around the outside and the outline of the animal. Some more quick sketches. Here you can see I'm focusing on the patterns on this stingray. This was in the rainforest section. So at this aquarium, they also have birds and stuff like that in the rainforest section. It's really cool. And there was quite a few people up there. So I make notes. You can see my timestamp again, and I made notes about how busy it was. So this is something that could be in the future useful information for me. I could come back, and if I go back to this place, having some information about what was busy, which areas were busy, or sort of notes like that to myself. So your nature journal can be used for other types of journaling besides just what you see in nature. It's useful to pay attention to those other things because that is part of the experience. A lot of times in our nature journals, we think like, oh, I shouldn't write about this stuff. I shouldn't write about the people or my own experience. I should just be focusing on the plants and the animals, but that's not the case. I think it's really useful to include this kind of information in your pages. This was really fun. They had poison dart frogs, which interestingly enough, in captivity are not poisonous because their poisons are based on the food that they eat. And in captivity, their diets don't provide the chemical compounds necessary for them to be poisonous. So they're often just referred to as dart frogs in captivity. It was a great opportunity to use some of my saturated colors and that I often don't get to use. So that was really fun. It was also a great opportunity to see, this is not a dart frog, but the Panamanian golden frog. I think it's no longer considered extinct in the wild, but for a while it was considered extinct in the wild and the species was only surviving in captivity. I think since then they might have found a few that are still alive in the wild. So I consider it a privilege to be able to nature journal species such as that. There was also a three-toed sloth, but this was all I could see of it. And this is an important point about animals in nature journaling. A lot of times, if you're practicing drawing animals at home, you're practicing drawing them in these perfect positions. Or if you're practicing drawing them from photographs online, you're drawing them in these perfect positions. But in the real world, even if it's at like a zoo, you might only see part of the animal and you might become afraid to draw what you see. So that is where writing can come in. That's why I wrote basically all I could see of this sleeping sloth. Sleeping sloth. Say that 10 times fast. If you are afraid that your drawing maybe doesn't convey the image of the animal because it looks weird or that's just the view that you have, use words, and the words will help allay your fears or your concerns or your insecurities about how much your drawing is able to capture. Here I went more into the fin shapes and stuff like that. If you've seen some of my other videos, this is something I'm really interested in, is biomechanics and the hydrodynamics and aerodynamics of shapes like this. Fins, tails, flippers, all that kind of stuff is something I'm really interested in. So whenever I get the chance to observe live fish while they're swimming, I pay attention to these things. Also, I did get a nature journal some penguins not that long ago at the San Francisco Zoo. I'm going to look over here at the comments. For some reason, I don't seem to be seeing people's comments. So just to let you all know, if you're trying to post comments to me, I might not be able to see them right now. I have a feeling people are on watching and posting some comments, but for some reason, I'm not able to see those. It might be some issue with the platform I'm using for making this video. Oh, there we go. I see. Never mind. It's working. Lori is here. Hi, Lori. Okay, that's good to know. I thought there was something maybe wrong with the comments. Here are some more pages. This was an interesting thing, actually. Maybe this was before, but there was a guy working there who told me that the dorsal fin on the fast fish is taller. So that fast fish have a taller dorsal fin. And I think that might actually be true. However, he then went on to say that the dorsal fin is taller on fast fish and fast sharks because they push with it. Now, I don't think that is the case. I'm pretty sure, based on my limited study of fish hydrodynamics, that they're not propelling themselves with their dorsal fin, that primarily they're propelling themselves with their caudal fin. However, I think that it might be true that there's a correlation between tall dorsal fins and fast moving species, but it probably has something to do with stability. Anyways, it was an interesting example of someone giving maybe what is one piece of true information, but then creating a story to explain that might not be true. And I think that's one of the things that nature journaling can help us do. And especially if we're teachers or educators or anyone who works with kids, to not overstep what we know and to try to just keep it, keep using questions to propose things as questions and as possibilities instead of saying because the dorsal fin, the tall dorsal fin pushes them faster. And I think that humility is something that can help us learn better in nature, but is sorely lacking in our society. The last thing that I drew there was a skull of a piranha relative that was really amazing. And you can see I tried to analyze the teeth and imagine how these teeth worked to crack nuts, because this species, this piranha relative, is vegetarian, I believe, but it eats lots of heavy seeds. And so you can see this is the kind of thing you might shy away from, especially if you're getting really precious with your drawings, because like this isn't necessarily aesthetically beautiful. These are teeth, and you can see like in some of these cases, as I'm trying to learn about them through my drawings, they're not necessarily reading. When I say they don't read, that means a viewer, if you just saw this, you might not know that's a tooth. Whereas this, if you saw this, you would know this is a snake. However, there are things that you need to draw. If you're interested in learning about them, interested in documenting them, there's things that you're going to want to draw that don't read. They don't read as something that most people are going to be able to tell what it is. And so just kind of understanding that concept and realizing certain things when you draw them are going to be hard and they might not read is going to help you maybe not be so critical of yourself and realize that that is about that subject matter. and not about your skills per se. It was really fun to draw this. And this is in the same genus as my pet snake. This is an Amazon. Wait, no, this is an emerald tree boa. They're called Coralis caninus. I have an Amazon tree boa, same genus, different species. But it was really fun to draw this, also because it was not moving. These snakes are usually pretty sedentary during the day, and they have this characteristic way that they fold up on branches. So this is kind of one of those things, like if you can't see the head here and this didn't have a pattern, this might be one of those things that when you draw it, this animal from this perspective might look really weird and it might not read. So like what I was saying up here about these teeth, this shape might not read as a snake. However, if you get more of the pattern, and some people are familiar with, okay, yeah, they know there's snakes. They have a mental image in their mind that there are snakes that wrap over tree branches like this, and there's the head. That might make sense. But it was really fun to try to draw this while everything was like busy and crazy around me. It was a really fun trip. And I really just enjoyed, I love nature journaling at aquariums and stuff like that. So I just want to share those pages with you. And one thing I wanted to point out is that, you're joining in on this live show right now. And I do share pages here. I also share pages on my Instagram. But what I'm going to start doing now is when I do my complete nature journal share, where I go through all of the pages in my nature journal and review them at the end when I finish a book. So like I have less than 10 pages left in this nature journal. What I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be doing those journal shares as a live. You'll get to see them if you join in live, but after that, it's just going to be available for my Patreon sponsors. So back here, you can see I think I have over 40 nature journals filled. And when I share those, when I complete each one, that's going to be something that I'm going to do just for Patreon patrons or for the people who are lucky enough to join in on the live. And I usually don't promote my Patreon on here, but this is the main thing that is supporting the Nature Journal show. I'm doing 2 videos a week and it takes a bunch of time and I love doing this, but this is the main way that you can support, and you can also get access to some of those benefits, special access, previews and stuff like that, including parties. So we have a patron only party coming up on July 3rd, I believe. It's a really fun Zoom get together. And that is one of the things that is available for patrons only. There's going to be a couple more things that are coming up for patrons that are special. They get certain videos that no one else gets to see. And they're the ones that helped me build some of the stuff that I'm using for my new studio to make this recording better. So you might have noticed that I'm recording from a different spot. And you can see here, I have a new table set up, and I finally got this extra screen here. So this makes it so much easier for me to edit videos because I'm not just looking at the videos on this small screen. Hopefully you've seen and enjoyed some of the recent videos on the Nature Journal show where I've done a little bit better editing. I also have gotten a slightly better camera, which is that little GoPro. So I've taken that to the coast, did the how to nature journal in a car, which was really fun. So that is all made possible because of the people that support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. It'd be really great if you go for $5 a month. That's like less than a coffee, the cost of a coffee. Well, it depends on where you get coffee, but $1 a month or $2 a month would also be helpful. And all of those people who are supporting me on Patreon, you guys are awesome. So let's keep going with the show. One thing I'm really excited to talk about is Wild Wonder is coming up. And if you don't know anything about it yet, you can check it out on John Muir Law's website. I'll show that here. So definitely check it out. It's a nature journaling conference. So this to me is one of the indications that nature journaling is really growing, is that we have our own conference. We also had International Nature Journaling Week, which was really cool. I taught a class at that all about asking questions. Some of you probably joined in on that class. It was really fun. And now next week we have Wild Wonder. It's a nature journaling conference. There's going to be some great speakers. I tried to interview as many of the teachers as I could before Wild Wonder started. and I'm going to be interviewing some of them on the show coming up. And I'm hoping maybe you all can help me, but I'm hoping to interview some of the pretty big shot people who are going to be there, including Amy Tan, Richard Love. He's the author of Last Child in the Woods, the book that I just read recently. He's the author of that book, so he's pretty well known. He's the author of the Nature Deficit Disorder book, and I would love to get some of these sort of bigger names on the show. So let me know in the next couple of weeks, like what you think, who of those people you want to see most on the show. The other person is the really well-known birder, Dr. Lanham. He's a PhD. I believe his PhD is in ornithology, and he has a bunch of great videos online about what it's like to be a black birder. I think I mentioned him in my interview with Timothy Joe a while back, and the challenges of being a black birder in the U.S. with all of the racism that they experience. And so he is going to be a speaker at the conference next week as well. And so is Jane Kim, an amazing artist I have a link to her art on my website. Anyways, those are some of the big people that I'm hoping to interview, but I'm also going to be taking a ton of classes during the conference. So I'm trying to take as many classes as possible. Let me know in the comments if you're taking classes at Wild Wonder, and I'll probably see some of you there. So let's do this next thing. We're going to do some nature journaling, a little bit of nature journaling together. So get your nature journaling supplies out. I'm going to switch to the document camera and put some things underneath the camera that we can look at together. So get your nature journaling supplies out. I've got mine out here. Let me get a new page going, or I'll just work on this page down here. And we're going to look at some stuff together. So it should be fun. If you have chocolate, go ahead and eat some of that. Oh, yay, Lori's going. That's great. Which classes are you taking, Lori? The thing about it being online is it's theoretically possible to take all of the classes, which can be overwhelming. All right, so the first thing I want to look at is just a little warning here. If you have extreme arachnophobia, you might want to pause the video. If you have mild arachnophobia, I recommend you practice. I've spoken with a variety of people who have found that nature journaling has helped them deal with their fear of snakes or fear of spiders, and that nature journaling, something that you have some fear of, can actually be a helpful way to get over that. So I wanted to share a little bit here about Tip Tap, the tarantula, because they recently molted again. And let's see if we can take the molt out and maybe nature journal it. First thing I'm going to do is get a catch cup. So in case you didn't know this trick already, if you ever have a spider or a fly or a wasp or a bee or anything like that you want to get out of your house, this is the best tool for it. A clear plastic cup around this size. If you're dealing with flying insects, you might want one that is taller, like a yogurt. It's better if it's clear, but like a yogurt size cup. I think this is a pint, maybe a quart size would be better for the flying insects. And then a stiff piece of paper like this. So this is called a catch cup. And the way it works is if there is a spider or a bee or a wasp on your window or on a surface somewhere, you use the cup and you catch it like that. And then you slide this piece of paper underneath really carefully. And then you have the bug in here, and you can pick this whole thing up like that. And as you can see, the bug is in there and cannot get away. So that is a really useful thing if you have any kind of spider or something like that in your house that you want to release outside, is to have a catch cup ready to go. You can use a glass, like a drinking glass or something like that, but I like this plastic. So while I open this enclosure with Tip Tap, I'm just going to have this on hand in case Tip Tap gets out and goes for a little walk, and then I'll have something to catch them. I'm also using, in case you didn't notice, I'm using the gender neutral pronoun them because I really hope Tip Tap is a female, but I don't know yet. So I'm just calling them instead of it. All right, so I'm going to try to take this lid off here. Maybe I'll bring the camera a little bit lower. You can see there's a lot of webbing. Tip Tap is a pink-toed tarantula. They are an arboreal tarantula, so they often make a lot of webbing near the top of the enclosure, which makes it hard for opening the enclosure to get to them. But what I'm going to do is just really carefully take the lid off here. And maybe we'll get a chance to, do some quick sketches of Tip Tap. That's what I like to do. That's one of the great things about having a pet tarantula or a pet snake or a pet anything. So look at that, all that webbing up there. And it might look like there's two spiders, but one of those is the molt. So spiders are, where did I put I might have to use my hands because I don't know where I put the little tweezers here. Shoot. I don't know where I put the tweezers down. Tarantulas have exoskeletons. They're arthropods like crabs and insects. And if you have an exoskeleton, you can't grow without shedding sort of this outer layer of the exoskeleton and growing a new one on the inside. So every time the spider grows a certain amount, they have to do this molting. So I can't find my tweezers, so I'm just gonna have to go in here with my hand to try to grab this molt. So it's important to know about molting because sometimes you might find these things you think are dead spiders or you think are dead crabs, and it could, or dead cicadas, and it might not be the dead animal, it might just be their molt. And then if you're nature journaling, you could potentially come up with a whole bunch of stories like and questions about like, why are all the crabs dying? Why did this spider die? And that question would be based on a false assumption. So the helpful way to know that this is a molt and not a dead spider is back here. You can see, I think that's called the cephalothorax, is the part that goes over the head on a spider, and you can see that it's separated off and that there's hardly any abdomen back here, but the legs and this part at the bottom, I can't remember what it's called, are all fairly intact. But that is one of the ways you would know that this is just an empty shell and not a dead spider. And so that's the molt. So let's practice. I'm going to zoom in on this and we can practice drawing this. One thing that I think is really great about drawing spiders is they're very similar to hands. So if you know that a classical art technique practice is to draw your own hand, spiders are similar. So you get to practice a lot of techniques that are really important for drawing that will carry over to other types of art and other types of nature journaling when you draw spiders or you draw hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this molt here and zoom the camera in on that a little bit and do some practice sketches. So I'm going to move Tip Tap out of the light here. Maybe we'll come back and look at Tip Tap in a second. All right, so I'm going to get my sketchbook. I'm going to show you how I would approach this. Maybe I'll just put the molt on top of here. There we go. All right, turn down the light a little bit. So first thing I would do is try to focus on like gesture studies. So instead of thinking about details or worrying too much about it, I'm going to just draw quickly. The other thing that I'm going to do that is possible with this pin right here, that is a good question, Lori. It is a little bit pliable, But let's start with this sort of side view and do a couple quick sketches, and then I'll move it. I'll move it again. How about that? All right, so I'm going to look at the view that I see on my screen so that I'm drawing the same angle. Oh, now I found the tweezers. I guess I put them in my pocket. That was this is what I probably should have used before to take that out. Okay, so I'm going to use the gray side of this pen. If you're feeling tentative, gray ink can be good for that. And I'm doing a little bit bigger than life size and just focusing on what I see, not what I think should be there. This is almost like a blind contour drawing the way that I'm doing it. Oh, and then I should also put some information. Tip tap. I should also point out that I think it was people on Instagram that helped name Tip Tap, and the other baby tarantula I had's name was Tango. Tango died in a molt. The molt didn't work out, but people on my Instagram helped name that. If you haven't seen my Instagram, you can check it out at Marley Pfeiffer. Basically, if you can spell my last name, you can find me anywhere online. That doesn't even fit on the screen. Okay, so let's go ahead. Oh, Lori's putting down metadata. Good idea. All right, so that's one quick sketch. That's what I would recommend. You could also, if you go straight to the black, you could try to capture the difference in darkness. One of the other names that was proposed for Tip Tap was mittens because of the dark ends of the feet. But I'm not working on details right now. I'm just trying to do these sort of gesture sketches. So I'm going to reposition here. This is sort of the above. And yeah, this does sort of look like a tangled mess, but this is good practice for drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and do another quick sketch here. I'm kind of doing it like a blind contour drawing because I'm looking at the computer screen so that I'm drawing the same angle that you all are drawing. So who can guess what would be, in addition to this, who can guess what would be the other classic nature journaling technique that we would use on something like this? What nature journaling technique, in addition to these sort of quick sketches, quick practice sketches, what nature journaling technique would we use? what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink and expand. So you can see both of these are basically at the same scale, which is about like a slightly expanded from real life. So larger than real life. Yes, Lori nailed it. I wonder it reminds me of. We're going to do that in 1 second. That would be the easiest and classic thing to do with this. So this could be like a 15-minute, if you've ever wanted to nature journal every day, this is an example of how you could do it in only 15 minutes every day. So you could do this sort of quick sketch of something like, how many of you could find a dead spider or a spider molt in your garage right now? In your garage. Even my sister, who I was visiting in DC, she lives in an apartment building. They take the elevator every day, and then their car is in this garage. It's all concrete, but there's spiders. So you could find a spider in 5 minutes, do a quick sketch like this, and then do, I wonder it reminds me of, in a 15-minute nature journaling session in an urban place. So it's definitely possible. I'm going to do another quick sketch. So I'm going to move the spider again one more time. I mean, that's kind of the same position as before, but that's fine. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to blow it up. So not like explosively blow it up, but make it bigger. And this is like your art calisthenics, your drawing calisthenics, is practicing controlling the size. A lot of times we draw everything at basically the same scale, maybe like just a little bit above life size, or maybe like half life size for bigger animals and plants and stuff like that. But being able to practice drawing stuff at different sizes is really important. And we often aren't in complete control of that. And we're often not even aware that we're not in complete control of that. Woo, okay, so this is sort of the bottom here. It's going up this way. Legs coming off here. The leg coming off here. So you can see in this one, I've tried to do, maybe this is like, this is more than twice the size of that. So practicing that, now I'm gonna do a small one, as small as I can. Yeah. When I was in Tanzania and we did a nature journaling safari with John Muir Laws, I was helping him out. We did that 2 years, 2 different trips to Tanzania to nature journal in the Serengeti and stuff like that. It was really fun to be able to draw elephants and really big animals in a small drawing. So you can see I almost failed. Like, this is not that much smaller. So I'm going to try again. It makes you focus on like and prioritize like what are the major shapes, and you might have to leave out more when you draw a small drawing. So this is, you can see here, I've drawn 1, 2, 3, 4 versions of basically the same perspective. It's been about 7 minutes maybe. That's something that is a really useful drawing practice. You don't have to do it with spider molts. You could do it with plants and just practice drawing something like that over and over again. I'll show you some other examples. You could do this with people. If there's a certain hand gesture that you want to try to draw, try drawing it over and over again. You can do this with birds, with fish. Here's an example where I was trying to draw the face of this fish that someone caught, and it was a challenging angle. So I tried drawing it multiple times at different sizes. So this is the kind of thing, here's a leaf that I just was drawing over and over and over again. This is the kind of thing where your nature journaling can improve greatly if you keep repeating and drawing over and over and over again. So now I'm going to do an I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. And the way I like to do that is just make a list, and I don't worry about spelling or complete sentences. So what I often do is I notice, colon, I wonder, colon, it reminds me of. And this you can do verbally. So this is really good if you are working with kids who can't write yet. Really little kids can do this. You can do this with a group of people in a really short amount of time. So I'm going to start looking at this or looking at whatever object. This could be, you could do this with the nature that is your own body. Like, what do I notice about my hand? Well, one thing I'm noticing is this sort of blotchiness that I don't always notice. Oh, look at that. I noticed that when I push on my hand for a little bit, the color changes to light, and it's also more of a homogeneous color than this sort of blotchiness, and that it goes away. The color goes back to the red blotchiness when I take the pressure off. So that's an example of I notice. I wonder what the blotchiness is caused by. I wonder why that blotchiness is not always visible. I wonder how that changes when pressure is applied. I wonder how the speed of it going back might tell me something. It reminds me of, for some reason, it's reminding me of an Etch-a-Sketch drawing toy that I had when I was a kid. So that's an example of I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of on my hand. But let's go back to this spider molt. Nature is everywhere. Remember, if you saw that post on my Instagram, nature is everywhere, even in cities. You don't need to, you have nature, you are a part of nature. So you can look at your own biology, your own anatomy, and do nature journaling on that. If you have nothing else, it is possible, or the sky. So let's look at this. So first thing, obvious things, I'm just going to say black tips. I kind of want to say dark tips now. Dark tips. Hairy. Hairs, not all same size. I'm going to zoom in on the spider so that if you, or the spider molt, I should say, so that if you have, you can make some of these observations like I am. So let me just change the position of my camera. Hopefully this works. Gosh, that didn't totally work. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. Hopefully you'll be able to see this better. This camera is not super good at close-ups, but sometimes it works. There we go. I think you can see some more details that way. So on your own paper, you could be writing down your own I notices. So starting with observations. And when we do this, sometimes it's good to pretend like we're an alien and we don't know at all what we're looking at. And you just focus on your observations, like that immediate information that your sensory system is providing. That's different from bringing in outside information. Like if you start naming the technical names for the leg segments, like that is the tarsus. I noticed that the tarsus has hair on the top and not on the bottom. That is not really, that doesn't really count for I notice. So I notice should really just be about the shapes, the sizes, the direct observation. So for example, I notice there are no hairs on this part, that little part there, that dark part. So I'm going to write that down. No hairs. Maybe I should say I can't see hairs on the dark part in the middle. I notice there are more hairs on the tops on one side than the other, because I don't know what the top is technically. If I'm an alien and I don't know anything about this organism, or that it is an organism, I won't know what the top or the bottom is. More hairs on one side. So that's an example of I notice. Now I'm going to go into I wonder. I wonder, and I did a whole video about a taxonomy of questions. If you watch that one, that will give you a lot of clues of how to come up with questions if you're struggling to come up with questions. So I'm going to say, I wonder what makes the color. In my taxonomy of questions, that would be an ingredients question. What are the ingredients? What is the composition? What is the chemistry? What makes it smell like that? What makes it taste like that? What makes it that color? Color is usually a composition questions type of question. I could ask, now I'll ask a why question, which this one often comes to our minds first. This is a human thing, I think. And kids ask this a lot, but why does it have hair? You can't just let these questions go by themselves though. Why does it have hair? Because there's often assumptions built into why questions. Some of them might not be answerable. So why does it have hair? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissect that why question and say, is there a reason it has hair? Because that's an assumption. Not everything has a reason, actually. Is there a reason it has hair? Another way I could dissect that question and be a little bit more explicit is, what are some purposes or functions of hair? Now, this is getting us into some of the engineering questions, like how process questions, how does it work? What are some purposes or functions of hair? And you could ask like a how might question. How might hair, if you want to if you have a theory, for example, so say you have outside information. You have outside information from, or you're working with a child or another person who has outside information. How can you turn that outside information into a question instead of just stating it as a fact? Well, what you could do is you could say, how might hairs help an animal with a hard exoskeleton? A hard exoskeleton that has no nerves on it. So if you have a know-it-all in your class or you are a know-it-all, this is how you can challenge them to phrase their knowledge or their memorized facts as questions. How might hairs help an animal with a hard exoskeleton that has no nerves? Question mark. Instead of me saying, oh, the hairs are there because animals with exoskeletons don't have nerves on the exoskeletons like we have on our skin. So hairs are often used for sensory purposes. How can you phrase that as a question? If you phrase it as a question, that helps you, one, because you could be wrong or that information could change at a later date. And keeping it as a question helps you keep an open mind. Hi, Sandra. Sandra's asking if it's a wolf spider. This is actually a baby tarantula. I believe this tarantula is about 2 years old now. This is their molt. So this is the shed part of their exoskeleton that they shed during their normal growth. All right, so now we're at It Reminds Me Of. So I'm going to zoom back out so you can see my page here. So It Reminds Me Of is sort of the least important one, depending on what your main goal is with your nature journaling. But I think It Reminds Me Of is not quite as important as the other ones. I notice and I wonder the question asking are really the most important. It Reminds Me Of is really good for memory though. So whenever you connect something that you're seeing with something that you already know or that something that's already in your brain, it helps with your memory. So there's this theory, I'll make a drawing for this. There's this, in your brain, there are branchings. There's synapses, I think, are what's called the space in between, and then neurons in between. So things are connected. So this might be connected this way, and it might be connected this way, and it could branch and connect to two things over here, and then these are connected to other things. So if you have something that's connected to very few things, what happens is your brain is a use it or lose it economy. So if this neuron right here is something about maybe this tarantula molt or someone's name that you just learned at a party, if this isn't connected to anything else except for one thing over here and one thing over here, it's easier for your brain to do what's called neural pruning. I'll write that out. Neural pruning. And neural pruning is when your brain notices this is not connected to very many things. We might not need that very much, and it comes in and it cuts those. It prunes out the unimportant information. So to prevent that, what you've probably learned already about learning people's names is that if you connect that person's name to something you already know, it will help you remember it. And the ancient Greeks and Romans were really good at this, and they did these memory palaces where they would associate things they were trying to memorize with other information, especially funny information or lewd information or lewd images. And that would help them remember. So I'm going to just say the first thing that came to my mind is it reminds me of a crab, a hand. So if you're working with kids, this is a good opportunity to bring in funny stuff. If it is funny or absurd, it's easier to remember. If it's related to food, it's easier to remember. So if you're looking at animal poop, for example, like if you're doing wildlife tracking, what candy bar does that animal poop remind you of? If you connect it to food, now this looks like there's another spider here. That's funny. If you connect it to food, you connect it to absurd things, it'll help you remember. And this is also the place to bring in the information. So like I said before, if you have a know-it-all in your group, you can use the It Reminds Me Of as a place to bring in that outside information. So it reminds me of a tarantula molt. So you probably have someone in your group or maybe part of your own brain that's been wanting to say that all along because you know what this is. You know from outside information what this is. And we've been going through all these other steps. We've been going through I notice. We've been going through I wonder, and we've been avoiding saying what this is until it reminds me of. But in the it reminds me of, that's the opportunity for the people in your group to say the species name if they want, or anything like that. That's how I like to use it reminds me of. A tarantula molt, I already said a hand, something on a sushi roll. So that would be sort of my third one. So in addition to helping with the memory and the neural pruning, this it reminds me of is also just a way to sort of lubricate your brain by connecting distinct, different, far away parts of your brain. Oh, hi, Ivea. Ivea just joined in. Welcome, Ivea. Ivea is probably super busy getting ready for Wild Wonder coming up. I know you're doing a bunch of stuff for that. Um, so something on sushi. Anyway, so when you're connecting distant parts of your brain, that is a really useful exercise for creativity, and just for your brain in general. So trying to connect a spider molt with sushi is a really useful way. Even if it seems like a silly thing to do in your nature journal, it's good for your brain. It'll help your memory, and all of that. So that is that molt. I'm going to add that to the other molts that I have that I'm keeping track of, um, and watching the growth of Tip Tap. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit on the everybody's always interested in the mouth parts of things. So let's see if I can get a closer look at that. Let's see here. So the camera wants to zoom in on the paper. So let's do this. This camera's not really made for close-ups, but ooh, look, you can see them a little bit there. You see that? Oh shoot. It's now it's picking up that drawing of the tree boa, the emerald tree boa really well, but not the spider. Here we go. Let's see. Come on. Oh, there you can see a little bit. I taught a class a while ago with Stephanie Dole, the beetle lady, and she had this whole really interesting thing about how arthropods have evolved and how different bugs have evolved and how the different parts have been adapted from the similar structures. So I don't know if you can see the mouth parts really well, but I did my best. Maybe we should do a quick sketch from this angle because this underside is actually really interesting. So if you have your paper out, oh, great question, Lori. It really depends. I think when they're younger, they're molting a lot more frequently because they're growing fast. So the amount that they molt is just basically based on how fast they're growing. And usually when they're younger, they're growing faster. So this molt right now from Tip Tap, this is the first molt in a while. Let's see if we can draw the underside there, because I think that's really interesting where everything joins together. Is that sort of in focus? Let me see if I can focus the camera again. Come on, you can do it, camera. Oh, it's distracted by the drawing. The camera is distracted by the drawing. Let's slide up a little bit this way. There we go. There we go. Okay. One more try here. Oh yeah. Okay. So try to draw that. At least get your quick sketch. One or two, if you can use iterations like I was mentioning before. So this is the underside where the legs connect together. And when you're drawing hands, this is also a super useful trick that a lot of the like Italian Renaissance artists used, is that if you can notice where there's multiple fingers connecting together, then you can simplify and draw that shape instead of drawing all the individual fingers. Does that make sense? So look for the places where multiple legs are attaching to one spot. And if you can start to understand the patterns of that spot and represent it in your drawing, then you can convey the important information without doing all the details. And you can approach this in different ways. You can do a quick sketch. You can kind of make it more of like a diagram. If you do a quick sketch, I recommend doing multiples, like iterations like I was doing before. See if you can draw it from different scales, zooming in or zooming out. And if you can, notice where the legs come together and there might be two legs that are all in, right next to each other. So let me see if I can point to this. So right there, there's two legs right next to each other. And over here, there's two legs right next to each other. It's the same, like the trick that I use when I'm drawing the human hand is to draw the pinky and the ring finger together and the pointer and the middle finger together, and then the thumb as a separate unit usually. So, and you can see this in some Renaissance paintings. The other way that it can work out is if the middle finger and the ring finger are one unit and the pointer and the pinky are separate units and the thumb is a separate unit. And it's like you only have to worry about drawing four fingers. And often in natural gestures, those fingers will actually be in that position with those two middle ones together and the pointer and the pinky kind of separate. All right, so hopefully you got a quick sketch of that. Maybe just have an arrow pointing in to where the mouth parts are. That's a hard angle to draw the mouth parts, but it's an important feature that people are usually interested in. So I'm going to do like a little box pointing to it. All right, so if you're watching this on the replay, you can pause this. I think if you're watching on the live, you can pause it as well, but I'm going to move it now because my hand is getting tired of holding the tweezers, and I'm going to show you my drawing. Oh, look, now it's standing up by itself. That's really convenient. So I'm going to show you the drawings that I got here, and this is just an example of how you can nature journal with something pretty small and maybe easy to find, not necessarily a tarantula molt, but another molt or dead spider you could find even in an apartment building. I know that there was plenty of these in my sister's apartment building. So right here you can see on my page, I have I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, I have a couple quick sketches and then I have this sort of zoomed in part. And what I can do is here I already have a part focusing in on where the mouth parts are. But what I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to turn this whole thing into a blowout bubble. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show where this is coming from on this drawing. So that's just an example of how you can quickly nature journal something small that you find. I'm really enjoying including more active nature journaling activities into my videos. So the part of the problem, and this is going to be my little rant here, one thing that happens a lot online these days and in our society is that we consume. We watch videos that a professional person made. We listen to music that a professional person made. We eat food that a professional person made. And we wear clothes that a professional person made and that we bought. And we're consuming those things and we're making less and less. And if you look at it, it's like this crazy pyramid where, less than 1% of people are actually creating things and everyone else is just consuming it. And a lot of those people that are consuming, they're not even really talking about it or engaging with it or asking questions about it. They're just buying it and using it and consuming it and watching the movie. So nature journaling is really cool because it's not all about creating art. That's not the main thing, but creating stuff is really important. And so being able to just take a moment and look at things and make your own version of it or interpret it in your own way and use your own writing and your own drawings to learn about it, to interpret it, and to be creative, it makes things so much more valuable, and it makes you into such a more whole person, because we are supposed to be creative. We are creators. That's part of like what makes humans special. And so I'm really enjoying kind of mixing in more of these activities into my videos so that I'm not also just perpetuating this cycle. And so when you watch these videos, I really recommend that you at the very least sketch note. So you could be sketch noting while I'm talking. You could be writing even just a little bit down, or I've seen Ivea does drawings of me. She does like drawings of my face or whatever while she's watching the video. All of that is an example of how we can be creators and not just consumers. And so like if you're just watching Netflix for 5 hours to relax, there's nothing wrong with that. And I know that can be more relaxing than drawing. But like, what if we were, sketching while we're watching TV? That suddenly like turns it into such a more valuable act. So I'm trying to incorporate more things like this. Let me know in the comments on the YouTube video if you think that is a cool idea, if you like nature journaling along with me in the videos, or if you rather just watch and enjoy like the nature journal adventures and stuff like that. So super fun today. Next week, I'm going to I'm not totally sure what I'm going to be doing yet, but I'm going to be taking as many classes as possible at the Wild Wonder Conference. I don't necessarily recommend that you do that because they start at 8 in the morning and they go until, like with the keynotes, I think they go until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So you probably will burn out if you try to do that all week long, like for the teacher conference and for the regular conference afterwards. But I think what I'm going to be doing is for people who aren't signed up and aren't taking the classes, maybe you couldn't make it to Wild Wonder this year, I'm going to try to, at the end of the day, show my sketch notes, the stuff that I learned, and kind of provide a little bit of sort of like a recap, sort of like they do at the Olympics. They have people talking about what happened at the end of the day. So hopefully that's something that'll be interesting for you. Make sure you're signed up for notifications. If you're watching this on YouTube, there should be a little bell icon like over here or over here somewhere. And if you click that, then you'll know when I'm going live, because I don't know exactly what times next week I'm going to be going live. All right. Well, thank you all for joining in. Lori, Ivea, and Sandra, thanks for participating in the chat. At first, I didn't know that if the chat was working or not. And it was really fun nature journaling this little tarantula molt with you today, and being a creator and a creative person in addition to just consuming. So congratulations on doing that on a Sunday. I commend you for your effort, for even joining in and taking time to like develop yourself and learn something on a Sunday instead of just eating donuts. Even though there's nothing wrong with eating donuts, you have done something even more special. All right, everybody, thanks for joining in. I'll see you soon. I'm probably gonna be going live almost like 5 times next week. All right, bye.